We're Sarah and Kate, and this is everything we did on our week-long cruise aboard P+O Iona for the Northern Europe city escape. So the night before we left, we printed out our boarding cards, travel insurance and information on any excursions we'd booked for port days. The luggage labels were printed and secured to the cases with luggage tags to prevent tears. The morning started early for the drive to Southampton, allowing an extra couple of hours for traffic and any pit stops we might need to make along the way. Our boarding time was previously 12:30 but was moved to 2 p.m. as our room had been upgraded from a standard balcony to a deluxe balcony cabin through Select Fare, which we'd purchased when booking the cruise. Arriving at port, we joined a short queue to park the car, which we booked through CPS parking as our extra perk on Select Fare. We were asked to wait while someone checked us in, taking photos to record any damage prior to parking. Sarah then handed over the key, emptied the car of everything we needed, including luggage, before a member of staff took the car to park it. They gave us a ticket to retrieve the car when we got back, so if you're doing the same, make sure to keep this safe. Across the road, we could drop off our luggage at the numbered and colour-coded conveyor belts. We were on deck 10, which was red, and once we lined up with our luggage, someone took the cases and we left aboard the ship at the terminal building, which was close by. We then joined a queue and waited for 10 minutes as it was busy due to the arrival of several coaches. Coach passengers get priority to go in, but the queue was consistently moving, and once you enter the building, you go up an escalator and join another queue for the check-in desks. For this, you'll need your boarding card and passport. Though we weren't asked for proof of insurance, it's recommended that you take it just in case. Here they'll check your documents and stamp your boarding card to show that you've been approved aboard and send you through security for bag checks with metal detectors and scanners, before you can board the ship and have your boarding card scanned. The staff will tell you to head to your muster station, which is the point you should go to in emergencies or when you hear the siren on board. Don't worry about getting lost or forgetting directions because there are plenty of staff en route to help you. Muster station staff will be wearing tabards, so they're easy to spot and will scan your boarding card to confirm your attendance and tell you to watch the safety video on your TV in your cabin. Now, embarkation day is busy. A lot of the lifts were out of action as the crew were using these to transport luggage to rooms. So if you have limited mobility or you're a family with young children and pushchairs, it's likely you'll have to queue for the lifts rather than taking the stairs. However, once everyone was on board and were heading to their cabins to get settled, it calmed down a lot. And for the rest of the cruise, it didn't really feel like the ship was at full capacity until it was time to leave the ship and head home at the end of the week. The cabins should be ready from 1:30, but if the doors are closed or staff are still prepping the rooms, wait outside the doors for an announcement over the tannoy. Reaching your cabin, there may be tape across the door to show your room has been cleaned and no one has entered after. There will be an envelope outside the door containing your cruise cards. These will allow you to enter your cabin, act as ID on board the ship, and charge drinks, food and shop purchases to your room. If you pre-booked a drinks package, you should see a sticker on your cruise card, which will show staff that you've paid for it. We purchased the non-alcoholic drinks package with our onboard spending credit and went to Ripples on deck 8 to get it activated. The staff were super friendly as they talked us through it and applied the stickers to our cruise cards. On the TV, you can watch the safety video, see your bill, and a map with your location if you want to track that during your cruise. This is very helpful if you don't want to pay extra for Wi-Fi, but still want to know where you are. The room we had was nice and clean, originally paying for a standard balcony cabin, but were upgraded to a deluxe balcony cabin, which was quite a bit bigger. The shelves and wardrobe had plenty of space, but the hangers were fixed to the rail, so you'll need to bring a hanger if you want to put up any full-length dresses or suits without creasing. Other passengers recommended buying magnetic hooks, which you can attach to the metal walls as extra hanging space for longer dresses or suits. Although we booked some restaurants, entertainment and excursions in the 2-week window before we were due to sail, there are some restaurants that can't be reserved until you have boarded the ship, such as the Excursion, the 710 Club and the Olive Grove. Bookings can be made through the My Holiday webpage app or by going to the restaurant in person and booking there. If you're really wanting to try these, it's best to get in early and book during this first day, as spots tend to fill quickly. We used the app to book the Olive Grove and afternoon tea at the Excursion, and then using the map from our cabin, went to the Excursion centre to see if there were any trips we wanted to join while at port. Though there wasn't a lot of options left, we managed to get a spot on a river trip called Land and Lake in Hamburg, a trip to Amsterdam from Rotterdam, and then a walking tour in Bruges. While everyone was getting settled in their rooms, we went to the Quays to have our first meal on board. The restaurant is included in the price of the cruise, and there are 3 counters at the Quays. Fish and chips is served every day. There's an Asian style counter which always has a veggie option as a katsu, sweet and sour, or a black bean dish, which changes daily and is advertised on the board. The final counter is American style and has burger options with fried chicken, corn and fries. We chose the fish and chips, which really deserve the rave reviews, and spoiler, we had this several times throughout the week. After that, we checked out the spa, cinema and bars that weren't open during the day, but you can go in and have a look around anyway. Some people also went to take a look at the kids club, which again isn't open on the first day, but you can see what it's like. Because we went in February and this was classed as a winter cruise, though the weather was mild for the time of year, a lot of people weren't keen on using the outside spaces, so we had a lot of these to ourselves. We layered up in jumpers and got a drink at the outside bar and sat in some sheltered outside seating until it was time for dinner. We decided to eat at the main dining room, and we found it really easy to get a table. You can either arrive at the restaurant and wait for a table, or join the virtual queue through the My Holiday webpage app. Just scan the QR code which you can find in your room. The app will show you how many people are in front of you, and you can choose any of the main dining rooms, as all the menus are the same. By the time we joined the queue and left our room, we had a message to say the table was ready, which was super quick. You can either accept the reservation and then you have 15 minutes to get there before they give the table to the next in the queue. Or if you're in the middle of having a drink, you can decline the table and rejoin for a spot later. Another option for dinner is you can either wait for a table with just your party, or you can join a larger table. There are fewer tables for 2, as most tend to seat 4 or more. So if you want to get seated faster, you can join a larger group. This is great if you're a solo traveller or you just want to meet new people. The waiters will come around and take your order, so pick what you like. Some people had 2 or 3 starters and shared a couple of desserts, rather than having the usual starter, main and dessert each. We thought the food was to a good standard and the portions are on the smaller side, but honestly, this is ideal because you're eating several times a day on the ship, and we felt larger portions would have been a bit much. You can order any drink and charge it to your room, but if you're on the drinks package, you can have whatever is included free of charge. After dinner, we went to the Emerald Bar and ordered an alcoholic drink, which was charged to our room. Finally, it was time to head back to our cabin to sleep and found the first delivery of our Horizon magazine, which shows everything that's happening on the ship, opening times for restaurants, and information about ports that you'll be stopping in the next day. We found the beds and pillows were nice and comfy. There was air conditioning, but it seemed to be on a cap on how low it would go since it was a winter February cruise. So we opened the balcony doors as Sarah likes to sleep in Arctic temperatures. We didn't hear anything from the other cabins, the sea was lovely and calm, and that was the end of day 1. This was our first full sea day on board Iona, so after a little lay-in we put our sign on the door to exploring, so the cabin crew could come in and clean, and went over our 3 options for breakfast. First, there's the buffet, which serves cooked breakfast, fruit, cereal, pastries and toast. Second is the Quays, which serves till 11 and is a simplified help yourself buffet with pancakes and waffles. And you can also request food to order. Thirdly, you have the main dining room, which serves yogurt, cereal, toast, cooked breakfast, and here they bring it to your table. Whether you're an early riser or like a lay-in, we definitely recommend checking the Horizon magazine to see opening times for restaurants, activities, shows, and port information. The magazine is delivered to your room every evening, ready for the next day's events. We found this really helpful to check and circle things we were interested in or wanted to do. Just take a photo on your phone if you don't want to carry it around, as while big events are advertised across the ship, smaller events might not be. For lunch, we ate at the Olive Grove, which is included in the price of the cruise. But there are a couple of items on the menu that are an extra charge, like French fries and baklava. We loved the food here, it was a good quality, and we actually preferred eating here over the main dining room. The Olive Grove is very popular, so we'd recommend you book on your first day on board, as we did, if you're interested in eating here. Our first show on board was at the Headliners Theatre to see Gareth Oliver, a comedian and former contestant of Britain's Got Talent. We really loved the show and were glad we'd booked online before we cruised to make sure we could get a space. But as he did a couple of shows throughout the day, there were spaces available at the latest showings. After that, we had drinks at the clubhouse, which is at the back of the ship. You can go in the daytime before the bar opens, and some people choose to eat their food here from the Quays, which is next door. The bar opens in the evening and they have different live music and things happening throughout the week. Though popular, there's no need to book this one and you can just walk in and find a seat. Now, something we didn't expect during the cruise was just how warm it was on the ship. So if you're taking a winter cruise, be sure to bring a couple of t-shirts and thinner layers along, so you're not too hot when you move from outside to inside. For dinner, we ate at the Beach House, which serves Tex-Mex style food and is not included in the price of the cruise. There's a cover charge per person, and though the price does vary, it's up to about £9 per person. If you book before you cruise via the website, where you will have to prepay, there is a discount available. Like the Olive Grove, there are a couple of menu items that are an extra charge, like the steak or the sharing dessert. The staff were lovely, but the portions were small from what we chose, and though the food was good, it honestly wasn't our favourite paid restaurant we ate at, so we're not sure we'd prioritise this over other options on board. We went back to our cabin to find our excursion tickets for the next day had been delivered to our room, so spent the rest of the evening in our cabin to prep our backpacks with everything we'd need for our first port day and turned in for an early night. This was our first port day of the cruise. Sarah couldn't sleep, so she was awake to watch the ship dock at Hamburg in Germany, which was an industrial port we felt looked best at night. We had organised our backpacks the night before so we wouldn't have to mess about in the morning before breakfast. To get off the ship, you have to have your cruise card with you and any excursion tickets for events that day. As we'd booked our excursions with P+O while on the ship, the tickets were delivered to our room the day before and had information about meeting point locations and time, so we made sure to keep these safe. As usual, the Horizon magazine is really useful, and it gave us information on the time zone, currency, and some bits about the local area. It will also let you know if you need your passport or not. So we took our passport, but it wasn't checked this time. We got off the ship very quickly. They scanned our cruise cards and let us go. P+O excursion staff had clipboards and will tell you which coach to get on. As it's an industrial port, you can't walk from the ship to Hamburg. The coaches took us to the city for our excursion called Land and Lake, which would tour the main sites of the city with a guide on the coach, before moving onto a glass-top boat to continue the tour, which we enjoyed a lot. As the excursion was for the morning only, we had the option to spend a couple of hours in the city to explore, or head back to the ship. For lunch, we went back to the Quays and had fish and chips and a katsu curry, which was just as good as before. Sarah decided to take a dip in the outside swimming pool, which was just warm enough not to take your breath away when you got in. The hot tubs are warmer than the pool, but obviously not as hot as you'd expect for one on land. More like warm tubs, really. The outside pool wasn't busy, as it was February, and most of the sunbeds were stacked, and aside from a few kids and their parents sitting with their towels, most people were still off the ship exploring. There really is a lot to do or experience on the ship, and one of those things is getting a haircut, which Sarah had booked beforehand as we were going to eat at Sindhu that night. We hadn't seen many reviews of this, so wasn't too sure about it, but she really wanted a trim and was pleasantly surprised at the quality and good service. She did have a head scrub too, but wanted to say that the staff will try and upsell you quite a lot, so be polite but firm if you don't want that. But on the whole, staff was super friendly, it was a good cut and blow dry, and she would definitely go back again. Finally, it was dinner and we'd booked to eat at Sindhu this time, and the meal was amazing. It's a modern Indian cuisine, so don't expect your local curry house. This is more Indian style fine dining. There's a £10 per person deposit when you book before your cruise. but this is taken off the bill at the end of the meal, and pre-booking gets you 20% discount too, so it's well worth booking before you go if you know you want to eat here. We had 3 starters to share, and then there was the sharing platter had lobster, steak and duck. Rice, lentils and naan bread were served as sides as compliments of the chef. Sarah had a lobster dish, which she said was incredible. For dessert, we had a trio of desserts, and Sarah had elements of trifle, which was a lemon posset with passion fruit jelly. Sindhu was Sarah's favourite restaurant of the whole trip, and she said it was one of the best meals she's ever had. There was attentive service, a high standard of food, and a really nice intimate dining room, and it was honestly a perfect way to end day 3. And this was our 4th day on board P+O's Iona and our 2nd sea day. We got an early start to watch the sunrise and make use of the infinity pool without other people around. The Horizon magazine will say when the pools and hot tubs are open, which is usually from 7 or 7:30. And when we arrived, the staff were just finishing up, so we could get in almost straight away. The view was totally worth the early start. If you're an early riser, it's the perfect time to check out the pool and maybe get an early breakfast at the buffet, which we found was much quieter earlier on sea days, as most people were more likely to relax without ports or excursions to go to. This day was both celebration night and Valentine's Day, which meant there was a dress code for the evening meal. The Horizon magazine will tell you which restaurants and bars insist on the dress code, which is dresses and suits. Although it says black tie, men don't have to be in a full suit, but they do have to have a jacket. Women were dressed in anything from cocktail dresses to ball gowns, so there was a real variety. The main dining rooms definitely had this code, but there's plenty of places to eat and drink if you don't want to dress up. Everyone had a rose left outside their room and vouchers for a free drink of either Prosecco or a non-alcoholic elderflower cordial, which you could redeem at any bar. For lunch, we had booked afternoon tea at the Excursion, which was booked on our first day through the My Holiday webpage app. Afternoon tea isn't available every day, and it is very popular, so we'd recommend you do this as soon as you board if you're interested. This was an extra charge at £17 per person, and we paid for this with onboard spending credit. We really wanted to experience as much as possible on our first ever cruise, trying as many of the restaurants and shows as we could. So that night we had dinner at the Limelight Club, where we saw Limelight. This meal and entertainment was an extra charge, which was booked 2 weeks before departure. The show started at 7, which is when we arrived, and we were very lucky to get placed at the side with a good view near the front. We'd recommend you get there 30 minutes before the show starts, when they start letting people in to get seated closer to the stage. The menu is limited with 3 to 4 starters and mains and 2 desserts. There is an appetizer and 3 courses included in the price. Personally, we were a little disappointed with the food, and the small portions meant we had a very late night trip to the buffet later. We also felt there were not enough staff available, so waited quite a while for drinks, though what servers were available were very nice. However, once Lee Mead came out, he really made the night, so he gave a talk and sang and answered questions, with the show lasting about 45 minutes. So while some people really love the food, for us, we'd only go to the Limelight Club if we were interested in the act. This was our 5th and 6th day on board Iona, and our 2nd port day. This time we stopped at Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And we'll say straight away this was our favourite port by far. The ship docks in the city, which is full of great places to shop and food to try, and it looks amazing lit up at night. We started the morning with a room service continental breakfast, which we ordered the night before. There is a tray charge of £2.50 to get it delivered, but you can order as much as you like. There is a card in your room which you can tick and write in which items, how much you want, and what time you want it delivered in the morning. Make sure to hang it on the door handle before 11 PM, and when checking the clock next morning, we found it was delivered exactly on time. There's everything from glasses of juice, tea, coffee, pastries, cereal, yogurts, fruits. Though there are no hot options, it is ideal if you're heading out on excursions and you want to pack a little extra something to take without having to go to the buffet yourself. We had an excursion to Amsterdam, which we booked at guest services on our first day. However, using public transport and organising the tickets yourself is much cheaper if you want to save money. When we left the ship, we were directed to a coach with a great tour guide. The coach stopped at some windmills on the way, and then we had a 1-hour boat ride through the canals, which was a real highlight of the trip. Here we stopped in the heart of Amsterdam and were shown where to meet before we had 2 hours of free time to explore. We picked up some amazing stroopwafels and gifts for the family back home, carrying everything back to the meeting point to get back on the bus and back on the ship. Then it was time for a late lunch or an early dinner back on the ship at the Quays for fish and chips and burgers. In the Headliners Theatre, we'd recommend that if you can't get tickets to something, turning up at later showings and asking about spare seats might help. Sometimes guests will book but not turn up, whether that's because they're tired, they're busy with something else, or they've forgotten they've had a reservation. If you're one of those people, there's no shame in cancelling a booking if you can't make it, but please do so someone else can take the spot. After the show, it had been a long day and we were shattered, so we went back to our cabin, and that was the end of day 5. As we stayed overnight in Rotterdam, which we were really happy about because it was our favourite port of the whole trip, in the morning we decided to do some more exploring and shopping. Once we got off the ship, we took a water taxi from the main terminal, which is about a 2-minute walk from the ship to the centre of the city. The cost of this does vary, but we felt it was reasonable for how quickly and how fun it was to get around this way. The water taxis do offer a tour as a group if you want to see the city that way, but we definitely recommend you hold on to small children and purchases tightly, because this is fast. After getting out of the water taxi, we walked 10 minutes into the centre and saw the famous cubed houses, which you can pay to have a look around. However, we were much more interested in the market hall, which had loads of food stalls and restaurants. We bought baklava and cannelloni to try, and then picked up some to take home with us, which were a big hit with the family. Before we headed back to the ship, we had dinner in a Greek restaurant as a little treat, and it was nice to have something different from what was on board. That evening we had dinner at the Olive Grove, which again we'd booked on boarding day. The food was just as good as before, and we'd really recommend eating here if you can get a spot. This is everything we did on our 7th day on board P+O Iona for the Northern Europe city escape. Bruges was our last port and last full day on Iona. This is an industrial port, so when we got off the ship, we were not allowed to walk there, so had to board buses that took us to a terminal, and it was from here that you could get more buses or coaches to your trips, or you could then walk into the city from here. Unlike previous stops in Hamburg and Rotterdam, this did take some time, especially when it was time to board the ship again, as everyone had to go through security to then get back on the buses to get back on the ship. So for this port, it was super important that we kept track of time. We'd recommend setting timers while exploring so you don't get wrapped up and have to wait or even miss the bus back to the ship. We'd booked a morning walking tour and river trip, which included an hour of free time in the city centre afterwards. We were given headphones and a receiver so we could easily hear what was being said, no matter our position in the group. Our tour guide was a local who was very passionate about the area, and we learned a lot, stopping plenty of times to point out different areas of interest. But it was quite fast-paced, so difficult to take pictures, and if you're someone who struggles with fitness or mobility across uneven paths, this might not be the excursion for you. As we reached the river before the boat was ready to go, our guide took us to a few extra areas to fill the time. Going through the rivers was really nice and felt Bruges had a similar feel to Oxford and Cambridge. During our free time afterwards, one thing we misjudged is that we thought the coach would pick us up in the city centre. So we brought a lot of things: cheese, chocolate, beers and presents, but we actually had to do the walking tour back to the bus meeting point. This time there was no starting and stopping, and the walk definitely felt a lot longer as we carried everything back. So if you plan on buying gifts, a backpack with plenty of space is essential. Once back on the ship, we had a late lunch at the Quays before seeing Gareth Oliver again, but this time it was at the clubhouse. This was his second comedy set, which was just as good as the first. The clubhouse is smaller and very popular, so we arrived early to get a good seat. There were 3 shows that day, so staff do encourage you to leave relatively quickly once it's over, so they can get set up for the next showing. For dinner, we ate in the main dining room before heading to see a musical in the Headliners Theatre, which we really enjoyed. With our last day finished, it was time to pack our cases and place them outside the door. The crew had placed an envelope with our time and location to leave the ship, which was 10 AM. If you want to self-disembark, do not leave your cases outside the door the night before, as you will take them with you when you leave. We kept our mini cases with us that had all our clothes and bits and bobs we'd need for the morning before we went to bed. And that was the end of day 7. Waking up on day 8, it was time to leave the ship. Everyone who wanted to self-disembark had to leave the ship between 7:30 and 8 AM. As we left our cases out the night before, and our time to leave the ship was 10 AM, we went to the main dining room to have a leisurely breakfast. At which point the captain arrived and announced that they were ahead of schedule and we could leave as soon as we liked. So we finished breakfast, left the ship and went to the luggage room. All of the luggage is organised by deck. So we went to deck 10, found our cases and walked out to collect the car. Here we just needed to hand in our receipt, which they gave us when we arrived to park, and then head to the correct bay. Just make sure to double check if the handwriting is unclear. You don't want to waste time searching the wrong bay if you can't read their handwriting. All in all, it was an amazing first cruise, and Sarah definitely got the bug to travel again, because she booked another cruise to see the Norwegian Fjords, and if you want to see how that went, you can check out this video here.